Shalom, this is an introduction to the book of Exodus, Shmote. First of all, it used to be called Sefer Yetziat Mitzrayim, the book of the Exodus from Egypt. And then the Greeks named it Exodus from the Greek word for departure. And the Jews now call all the books and all the portions by the first major word of that book or portion. And so the first major word here is Shmote, which means names, like the names of the descendants of Jacob. So the book begins hundreds of years after the book of Genesis. We have now the Jews settled in Egypt and doing well. And it says, Vayakam melech hadash, a new king arose who knew not Joseph. And so you can watch my video on the Torah portion, Shmote, the first portion, to learn more about this. But in any case, and I also have a video on Is the Exodus Story True? Which questions some of the historical aspects of this. But one famous commentator named Shimshon Raphael Hirsch said, what people would invent a slave pass for themselves? Which kind of makes sense. Why would they invent such a story if it wasn't true? Now, what are the reasons for the Exodus, theologically? Well, of course, Jews are always willing to blame ourselves for the genocidal, horrible intentions of others. Torah clearly says this Pharaoh wanted to kill all the Jewish babies, males, and when midwives wouldn't do it, he had them tossed into the river, and that's how Moses got there eventually. His parents wanted to save him by putting him in his basket. Nechama Leibowitz, who's now departed this world, was a very famous Torah teacher, and she pointed out a couple of interesting things. First, she talked about the educational motive for the Exodus, which was that the Torah says, "You shall not wrong a stranger nor oppress them, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt." That's obviously very important to God. That's from Exodus 22:20. It's very important to God because God identifies God's self in the beginning of the Ten Commandments as, "I am the Lord thy God who took you out of the land of Egypt." And the Torah says over and over and over, "You shall have one law for Israelite and stranger alike, and do not oppress the stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt." So there's clearly an educational motive in the slavery experience. God wanted to teach people to be compassionate, and so we're slaves. Now, of course, that seems like God would never do such a thing, but certainly it's an important lesson we learned, and the whole story of the Passover Seder tries to teach that lesson. In addition, the Bible often teaches that bad things that happen are a cause for sin. Now, the book of Job completely rejects that idea, and I did a video on God and evil to help explain this. But at least in the theology of some of the Bible, so what would be the sin? Well, the sin was, and some of the Orthodox Jews still kind of hold this theology, that the Israelites were assimilating into Egyptian society, and slavery was a punishment for that. And I don't like that theology at all. I don't think it's valid, but that was certainly one of the theories. But the book of Exodus has a very important historical aspect. The first time the word Am, nation, in context of the Israelites was used is the book of Exodus. It certainly forged the Jewish people into a nation. And it supplies the framework for this peoplehood. It contains the most significant historical memories until modern times. We often refer back to the Exodus, even though it's over 3,000 years ago. It's an underpinning of much of Jewish tradition, and it provides the key legal and ethical rules. We have the first set of the Ten Commandments. We have many other commandments, as I will go through in my mitzvah series in this fascinating book. And so as we encounter it, enjoy it. I thoroughly suggest that you read it. Well, the last few sections of it deal with the construction of the tabernacle, which is also interesting. But the first big chunk of the book deals with the whole historical experience of the Exodus. Shalom.